Good afternoon. This is Amber Castleman, and I also have Michelle Pruitt with me here from the department. Welcome to our webinar today. We are going to have Janet and Pamela from eScholar. So here in a moment I will turn the presentation over to Janet, and she will be presenting. A couple of things to mention is that if you need to download today's presentation, up at the top right-hand part of your screen, you should be able to choose the PowerPoint and download it. As always, we are recording this webinar, and we will have the information with the recorded webinar as well as the PowerPoint and the Q&A information that will be on our webinar website, on the department's website. So that will be available to you. Something else to mention is that if you are logged in twice, you may be hearing an echo, or the sound just may not be coming through very clear. So if you are logged in twice, you'll want to make sure that you're only logged in the one time. And today's webinar is kind of going over, it's an introduction to the new user interface for the MOSIS ID system. So it's going to have the same functionality that you're used to, but just want to let you know that it's going to look a little bit different. So that's why we are having this presentation today. And something else to mention is that these changes will be going into effect around the middle of November. So you will be seeing the new look around about November 16th, and we will be sending out additional communications about that. So so that you are aware of that. One other thing to mention too is that we are using the same layout, version 1.0, that we have always used with the MOSIS ID system, so that will not be changing. So with all of that said, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Janet.
Thanks, Amber. So good afternoon, everyone. Excuse me. My name is Janet Doherty, and I'm the Manager of Customer Education for eScholar. eScholar is the vendor for the unique ID system that's used in Missouri to assign the MOSIS IDs. So as Amber mentioned, in a few days, the unique ID system in Missouri will be upgraded to a new version. The purpose of today's webinar is to acquaint you with the new user interface that you will see in the new version. So during today's session, I'll present a review of a presentation that shows what the new version will look like, and then we'll answer some questions that you submit in the question pane of the webinar control panel. So also, as Amber mentioned, you can retrieve the presentation. It's posted in that webinar PowerPoint pane up at the top of the page there. And with that, we'll dive in. So what we're going to do today is review the new user interface for Unique ID version 10. We'll review what the interface looks like to upload a file, to resolve near matches, to download student records from Unique ID, and then also to access the files that contain file and data validation errors. And I'll show you how you access the system tools that end users are allowed to use. And also, just to reiterate what Amber said, the functionality that's available to you is not changing. There's no new functionality. It's just going to look a little bit different. So the topics we're going to cover is the ID assignment process, and then the near match resolution process, and what those two processes look like in the new unique user interface of the application. And then we'll review how you review file and data validation errors, and also look at the unique ID system tools. So for an overview, we'll start with an overview of the ID assignment process. Excuse me. So what does eScholar Unique ID do? And I'm sure most of you have been using this for a while already. So as you know, it creates and assigns new MOSIS IDs for students who do not already have one, and it finds an existing MOSIS ID for students who do already have one, and it assigns the either new or existing MOSIS ID to a student record in an output file, so that that student ID can then be consumed by other systems used at your district. So some of the key terms that I'm going to refer to during this presentation are on this slide and the next one as well. The only two I'm going to review right this minute are the first two, master record and submission record or input record. So when we talk about the master record, we're talking about the current active record that is in the repository in the Unique ID system. And when we're talking about submission record or input record, we are referring to the record that you are submitting to the system either by uploading a file, or if you enter an individual student using the Enter Online option. Those two things are what we're referring to when we talk about the submission record or the input record. So as a quick overview of the ID assignment process. Here in Missouri, you have two options for uploading your data to the system. You can either use the file upload option or you can enter an individual student online. But no matter which option you use, the data goes through this submission validation process, which first validates the file format. And if the file fails the format test, then the whole file is rejected and the file format must be fixed before the file can be resubmitted for upload. If it passes the file validation process, then it enters the data validation stage, at which case the individual data in the student records is validated to make sure that things like codes are correct and stuff like that. So in that case, individual records can fail file validation even though many of the records are okay. And those records that fail can be stripped out and then those records can be fixed while the rest of the file proceeds through the batch. After the data validation process, the file that has been uploaded is submitted to what we call the matching engine. The matching engine then looks at the input file or the records in the input file and compares those to the records that are already existing in the master repository to see if a student with that current name, birth date, and gender already exists in the master repository. If it does find that student, it takes the already existing MOSIS ID and assigns it to the output file. If it doesn't find any student with a individual name, first name, last name, birth date, and gender match, it creates a new ID for the student. If the matching engine can't really tell because it just doesn't have enough information, or the first name and the last name are too close to an existing record in the master repository, but they don't match exactly, then you might have your records end up in what we call a near match state. And the records that are in the near match state must have user intervention in order to resolve those near matches. So what we're going to do today is look at what these different processes look like in the new user interface. So first we're going to start with the ID assignment process. So we're going to follow a file through these first 5 steps of the process here. Well, when you log into the new application, this is what your home page is going to look like. So you'll see a list of all the batches that have been previously submitted. All the functions that are available to you are available through that upper left-hand menu icon. That's where you're going to find all the available options for you. So if you hover over that menu icon when you get the new application, your home menu will drop down, and from there you select whatever action it is you want to take. So I'm going to click here on Upload File. And when I click on Upload File, I'm presented with the option of using either Basic Upload or Advanced Upload. Now I know in Missouri, Amber has told me that many of you use the Advanced Upload option, so we're going to review both of those just briefly here. But for the basic option, if that's the option that you normally use, you browse to the file that you want to upload and then click the Upload button, remembering that the basic upload requires that your file have a header and a trailer record in the uploaded file. So you click the Upload button. If you're using the Advanced Upload option, then you'll again browse to the file that you want to upload, but you also have to supply some additional information. So you have to know whether or not you're using a tab delimited file or a comma delimited file, and you have to make that selection. That's a required field, as you can see the little star next to the word delimiter. So you have to choose whether or not which delimiter you're actually using and whether or not you want the file validation process to ignore the first row while it's being uploaded. So after you've completed those, filled in this form, then you can click the Upload button. So whether you use the basic upload option or the advanced upload option, in either case, the file gets submitted to the file validation process, which quickly, as long as the file passes file validation, it quickly moves to data validation. So the status then, when you get to the next page, will say data validation is in progress. So this tells you that the batch has already passed file validation and it's been assigned an individual batch ID, which you can see there. And data validation is the step following file validation, but the file automatically proceeds from file validation to data validation, so you don't have to do anything in order to move it along in that process. But when you're on the page where it says data validation is in progress and you see this back to home button, You have to be mindful of the fact that unique ID screens don't refresh themselves, so you have to click that Back to Home button in order to get an update of the status. So here I have done that, and I'm back on the home page now, and I can see that this batch has the next action of Assign Unique ID, which we'll look at in just a second. But before we do that, I want to point out to you that you can access additional batch information by clicking on this purple batch number. Basically, within the application, whenever you see some words that are in purple, they are a link, and you can link to additional information. So just as an example here, if I click on that batch number, I'm brought to a screen that shows me the statistics for the batch, the processing statistics, the download information, and just general information about that batch in case you need to get some additional information other than what's shown on that home page. You can drill into the batch information. But back on the home page now, my status says data validation is complete and I'm ready to assign unique IDs. So my next action is to push that Assign Unique ID button. And then the system will come back and tell you that ID assignment is in progress. And again, you have to click the Back to Home button in order to refresh the screen. And once I do that, when the file has completed processing, the status will change to tell you that all the IDs have been assigned. And in that case, your next action is to download Unique ID. So you can click that button right there. And then it'll tell you the file extract is complete. You click the Download button. And at that point, I didn't show this in this PowerPoint deck, but at that point you are just able to select whether or not you want to open up the file with the student IDs and view it right then, or save it somewhere so that you can consume it into another system. But you can also retrieve the batches that have already had the IDs assigned by going back to the home menu and using the download by batch or download by location links. So you have a couple different ways to access the information of student IDs that have been assigned after the ID assignment process has completed. Now we'll take a quick look at how you enter a single student. So that is an option for you. Under the home menu, you see this option for Enter Online. If you click that, you're presented with a form to fill out that has a few required fields. First name, last name, gender, and date of birth are required. You must fill those in. And then you click the Assign Unique ID button, and at that point you're submitting that record to the same process that the complete larger file would go through. So it goes through the file validation and data validation process, gets submitted to the matching engine, and then you can download the ID when the process is complete. Okay, so that ends the basic ID assignment process. Now we're going to look at what the near match resolution process looks like within the new user interface. So here in this example, I have a match that says that there were near matches or duplicates found. That means I submitted a file and it went into the matching engine, and instead of the status coming back as that all IDs were assigned, the status instead came back that there were some near matches or duplicates found. So I only have one next action that I can take at that point, and that is to resolve near matches. And this requires human intervention in order to resolve those near matches. So if I click on that Resolve Near Matches button, in this particular example that I'm using here, you can see that there are 3 separate records from my input file that came back as being in a near match. That means the matching engine couldn't determine if there were any records in the master repository that actually matched exactly to these students. But the matching engine found some records that it thought were close. So it's asking you to go in and look at them, each of them one by one, and make a determination as to whether or not you think an existing record matches this input record or not. So you have to click each one of these Review and Select buttons one by one in order to review the near matches. So here I've selected Review and Select for that first student that was on the list. And up at the top, I see where it says Student Record to Review and Select. That is the submission record. That is the record that came in the input file. And then down below it, I see the record or records, it could be more than one, but in this case it's only one, that were found potentially as near matches. And so now the system is asking you to look at that information and see if you can determine whether or not you think these are the same student. And you have 4 options here for making your decision. You can either say that you do think that the submission record and the record that was already in the master repository, which is this second one listed here, are the same student, in which case you choose Assign Selected as the button. If you don't think they're the same student, you choose Create New ID. That says you think the input record is a completely new student from what you currently, you don't currently have that student in the master repository at all. You can also select another record. If you cannot resolve this match right now and you just need to move on to try to resolve a different near match, you can select another record, which leaves this near match in the batch, but it doesn't, and so you can come back to it at a later time to resolve it. Or if you really can't determine whether or not these 2 records, at this time you cannot determine whether or not these 2 records are a match or not a match, then you could cancel the record from the batch and just eliminate it, and then the next time that it gets uploaded to the batch you would still have to resolve that near match. Oops, sorry, let me go back one. Okay, so from this record, from this page, when you are looking at the input record and the near matched record, one on top of each other, we highly recommend that you drill into the student name in order to do a side-by-side comparison, because that's where you're going to get the most information to help you make this near match decision. So in this case, I'm going to drill on this student's name, Sophie Agile, and I'm presented with the side-by-side comparison of the master record and the submission record. And you can see up at the top here, it told me what the match score was that came back for this submission record and the master record, and tells me some of the just general information up at the top. But if I scroll down on the page, and this is only a partial screenshot, here is a more complete screenshot, and this still isn't the whole thing. There's some more of it on the next slide. You see the master record side by side with the submission record and all the other demographic and informational data that's in there. Any of the fields that are different between the master record and the submission record are highlighted in yellow. And so you can easily tell how many of the records are different by looking at them side by side. And this is a continuation of the previous screen. So this is still the near match side by side comparison screen. And at the bottom of that screen, you still have the same 4 choices that you had on that shorter screen, except that you're making the choice at this point based on more information because you've done the complete side by side comparison review. But you still can either decide that these are the same student, which means that you're going to choose Assign Selected, or you can decide that the input record is a different student, a new student, and that you need to create a new ID for that student, in which case you would select Create New ID. Or if you just want to leave this, if you want to cancel this near match from the batch, because one thing to remember is that the batch will not complete processing until all the near matches are resolved. So if you don't, if you aren't able at this time to resolve this near match and you don't see that you're going to be able to do it in the near future, and you do need to get the IDs for all the other students that are in the batch, you may have to cancel the submission and come back to it at a later date. You can also just leave the near match in here and return to the list, in which case the near match still stays in the batch and you just come back to it at a later date and resolve it. So at this point I've made a choice. I've decided that the input record and the near match record are the same student. So that means that the existing MOSIS ID was written to this record, and I'm done with this student. Now I can select another record and continue resolving near matches for this batch. After all the near matches in the batch have been resolved, then the batch automatically moves to the Assign Unique ID state, and it will automatically take you to this screen, which we saw previously when we were just doing the basic ID assignment process. And it will tell you that the IDs are assigned and you're ready to download the IDs. But again, remember that all the near matches in the batch have to be resolved or canceled before the batch automatically moves to this Assign Unique ID step. Okay, let's spend a few minutes talking about file and data validation errors and how you get to those so that you can review them if you need to. So we said in the very beginning part, as soon as a file is uploaded to the system, it goes through this file validation process. And in the file validation process, if there is a problem with the file format, the file could be rejected from the system. What you will get in that case is that you'll get this upload file error message that says the file upload failed and you need to fix the errors below and then resubmit the file. In which case you need to retrieve the file by using the download batch feature and filtering all those batches to look for the rejected batches, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So from the home menu, under download, you select batch, and when you get the extract and download batch page, you can select rejected as the extract type, and only the rejected batches will be displayed at that point. So if I have done that, so here you can see that all the status of the batches, because I chose the rejected extract type, I'm only looking at rejected batches, and then I can extract the records from the batch and download those files and fix any errors that are in the system and then resubmit them. Looking at data validation errors, with data validation errors, it's not necessarily the whole file that's rejected. It might only be individual records that had a data error in them. So in which case you want to go back and fix those individual student records so that those students can get their IDs. So in that case, my status here will say that data validation was incomplete and I have to fix some data errors. So again, I can go down to the download batch option on the menu and ask for either canceled batches with canceled submission records or batches with errors to fix. Sorry, I'm recovering from a cold, so I had to cough. Okay, so if I've if I filtered my files by the canceled extract type, then I will only get the files that have problems with the records that are in them, in which case then I can extract the records, add them to the download cart, and fix them. Also in Missouri, Amber had told me that you are able to fix errors directly in the system. So in that case, if you ask for records that are in the processing stage of fix errors, you will be shown the batches that have data errors in them, and you can directly go into the system and fix the errors for this particular batch. If you click that Fix Errors button, it'll show you the records in that batch that need to be fixed, and you'll be able to edit the record directly from there. There'll be an edit button to modify each record. Okay, the system tools that are available to you are Student Search, Download by Batch, and Download by Location. So again, on the home menu, you can search for an individual batch by batch number. You can also search for an individual student. You can do a basic search, advanced search, or ID search for individual students. And that's going to search the master repository using demographic information that you put in one of these forms. So if I choose basic search, you have to put in first name and last name. You can also put in date of birth if you happen to know that. Obviously, the more information you put in, the better match you're going to get. You click that search button, and the system will return potential matches according to the search parameters. It will also return this match probability score, which gives you an indication of which record or records the system thinks is the better match. But it's still incumbent upon you to look at and review each of the records. So if you want to link to detailed student information, you click on the purple name and you'll be brought to the student record that showed up as a result of the demographic information that you entered. With Advanced Student Search, it just provides you with a form that gives you can enter more information, so you'll get it narrows your search results. First and last names still are required. The other fields aren't required. But presumably, if you're using advanced search, it's because you have more information that you want to put in. And then lastly, there's also the ability to search by ID. So in Missouri, I know you don't use SSN, so your version of the application can be configured so that SSN does not show up. But you could search by the student's unique ID if you happen to know that. Another capability you have, we already talked about the download by batch option, but you can also download by batch to retrieve the IDs that have already been assigned, or you can also download by location. So if you click on the download by location link, it allows the user to download the unique IDs for each location that the user has rights to access. So it's going to return the IDs for all the currently enrolled students for whichever school year you are in, and you will only see the schools that you have access to. Okay, lastly, Amber wanted us to just put this up here to remind you of the email address you can use if you need to get support for the Unique ID application, and also the phone number. So at this point, I'll turn it back to Amber, who I think is going to start to answer some questions.
Okay, thank you, Janet. So we will go ahead and pull up our questions and answers chat box. And if you're familiar with our regular webinars that we do, this will be very similar. So once you ask your question, then once we provide a response to it, then you'll be able to see both of those pop up on your box. And we will be on here for as long as we need to. I think we have the room for at least another 15-20 minutes. So if you guys want to go ahead and if you have any questions, we will be on here to answer them. And again, we want to thank Janet and Pamela with eScholar for providing this presentation for us today. So we will stay on here to see if you guys have any questions. Thank you. I went ahead and included the webinar link for where the information is going to be located for this presentation, the Q&A document, and the recorded webinar. So if you do need that information, the link is there, and that would be to our department's webinar page where you can find all the information for existing webinars as well as upcoming ones. Okay, so it looks like of the few questions that we have received, a lot of them are involved around the Parents as Teachers program. And currently within the ID system, we only have the lowest grade level of PK. We have entertained the idea of putting in an IT grade level, which would be for infant toddler, and we have actually done some of the work to have that done, but it has not always functioned correctly. So we will look into that again and see if we can't get that available so that you will have that as an option for a grade level when you're submitting IDs for your parents as teachers' children. There's not too many questions that are being asked, so I don't anticipate that we'll be on here too much longer, but we will definitely stay on for the next 5 to 10 minutes just in case you guys do have any additional questions for us. Okay, so it looks like the majority of the questions have been asked. So I think we are going to go ahead and end today's presentation. Again, we would like to thank you for your participation, and all of the information will be out on our website for you to access. And again, thank you to eScholar for providing today's presentation. Everybody have a great afternoon. Thank you.